Hey friends! So on this week's video we're gonna be seeing how to use light from different directions. Let's go! On this video we're gonna learn a bit more about lighting, but first of all we're gonna see the whole process for the character as we've been doing for the last batch of videos, because I want you to get more and more familiar with this way of working. So by the end of this video we will go through a series of different attempts to understand light from different points of view. But now we're gonna go through the inking. As always, I'm using Clip Studio here and I'm using default brushes, in this case the Maru pen. Sometimes I have to use other tools. As you can see here, I was trying to do the glasses by hand, but I was not really happy about it, so I just got rid of them and I redid them again, this time with the selection tool and the stroke function. We will learn more about it on future videos. For now, please note how I always try to use the pressure on the Cintiq in order to create lines that have different diameter. It's really important so we can find a dynamic line, especially for sort of a, we could say almost Disney way of inking here. I kept the glasses on a different layer because I want to put a low opacity layer between that and the eyes of the character. I'm gonna be redoing them later. By the way, this black shadow under the chin wasn't a good idea because that determined completely the kind of light that I had to use here. So if you want to do that, if you want to put dark shadows like this, make sure that they belong where they are and that you decided what light is coming from. I didn't, and that was a mistake on the final drawing. Hopefully it didn't look too bad. I found a way to just sort of camouflage that, but that wasn't a good idea. I just try to go as fast as I can so the inking keeps that freshness from the first sketch. Try to keep it simple and synthesize it, since I'm gonna work on the shadows to give a full 3D effect here. I think I'm gonna redo the glasses he's wearing very soon. And please note that whenever you're doing the clothing of the character, it's really important that it really looks that has weight. What I always try whenever I'm drawing it is that the clothes, it really looks like it's hanging from the character. It's not a solid structure like skin or bone or stone. It's something that it's hanging from another surface. I know that's not easy, but it's a technique as well. A good idea to get better on that is to practice on real life models. This is not a very complex character really. It has a lot of fabric on it, but it's not particularly difficult to draw. Also note that the thicker lines are always for the silhouette, and then I take care of the wrinkles on the clothes and everything, but using less pressure, which makes it look good. These are just secondary details. I cannot be using the same thickness everywhere. Well, his legs are missing now, and let's see if I get rid of those horrible glasses soon. I always liked Presto. This was a character that always seemed to have a lot of potential. So he was a magician, so he really had magic powers. The rest were more like, you know, the super strong guy or the invisible woman. I always liked this guy. It was a sort of a antecessor for Harry Potter. Finally I got rid of those horrible glasses, and I'm just proceeding. There we go. That was a much better idea. Excellent. So as you can see, flat color is really quick here. I'm just using selection bucket. And the idea here was that a lot of light was coming out from the magic hat from Presto, which is the magic object that he had to get objects that would solve difficult situations. So the idea is that the main source of light here was the interior of the hat. That's why I'm just trying to do a very general light. It's not a really powerful one, but a general light that affects especially the area of the character. The joke here, if we could use that word, was that, you know, Presto always had this issue about not being able to control completely his own magic. So I just wanted to summarize that with the body acting of the character, just kind of being scared of his own magic. See, here I included a very, very general light, a very powerful light using overlay, and that really helped me to enhance the light that I built in the face. But of course it was needing a bit more, so that's what I'm doing now. Also note that the contrast I created here with the red of the hair of the character and the green on his clothing work as a complementary color range that always works really, really well. Today we're gonna learn a bit about light and shading. I prepared this file with just the upper part of the character for Presto, and I'm gonna be applying light and shadow and describing the process for it. But you'll see that once you know how to do it, it's very repetitive. It really doesn't have any other secret than understanding the shape of the element we're trying to work with. And for that, you need practice. I keep saying this all the time, but the main technique that we have to improve what we do is practice, practice, and more practice. So as you can see, I made these arrows that you've seen on previous videos. I make 3D arrows. I will repeat this as well, because we need to understand that we are working on a 3D space. Okay, we're understanding all the shapes we have here as a 3D object. Now we could go into the structure and the skeleton for this character, and actually I got rid of the glasses that he wears on the original design because I wanted to keep it a bit simpler. But the goal for this is to show how light and shade is done in the simplest way possible. So let's examine what we have here on the layers. I'm just gonna put this on a folder. This is just for the title. And again, I simplified these as much as I could. Let's name these layer arrows. You'll find the PSD among the files for this month, okay, in case you want to check anything. So in one hand we have, or in one layer we could say, we have the ink. On the other one we just have a blank layer on multiply because I needed this to be a bit darker, and then just one layer with all these tiny variations of color. Okay, I had to make it darker because I want to work with lights this time. We could do the opposite as well, and we could start working with shadows on multiply, just like this. Okay, but for this I much rather to go from dark to light. Both results are the same. I keep changing from one to another, so there's not really a huge difference. Okay, let's start with this. So we have a very dramatic light coming from above the character. What would be the best approach here? What would be the best way to start with the light? So first of all, I'm going to create another layer on top. I'm going to press Alt. So this is what happens. We saw that on the previous videos last month. So I can work comfortably. And I can start light here. Yeah, I'm going to use pure white since I can always change the opacity depending on what kind of intensity do I want here. So the only thing I'm doing here for now is to create a gradient with a huge gradient brush that is now affecting this character. Now I could do all this, it would be the same. I just like to keep this tiny gradient here. And I'm gonna do light independently in one layer, depending, because then I can change the intensity of it. So I'm gonna lower the opacity a bit here. And I'm going to try to understand how the shapes would be affected by this light. And I'm not working here in color because I think it's really important that we understand how values work. Another thing that I could do, actually they use this technique a lot in American comics, is to do selections like this. They do a lot of selections. I don't use personally this technique very much, but I'm just hiding the selection now. But for doing stuff like this, you know, it can be useful. So it only affects the face. And normally what I do as well is to keep combining gradients like this, but I don't use gradients everywhere. I combine them with hard shadows like this, hard edge shadows. I see that in a lot of beginner artists, when they shade, they use an excessive amount of gradients everywhere, and it doesn't look nice. Everything looks like wobbly. I personally don't like it, and I think it tends to look a bit amateur. So as I said, let's try to understand for such a dramatic light how would affect the character as if it were a sculpture. Okay, now let's forget about color for a while. Our only concern here are shadows. And as I said, let's combine the hard edge shadows with some gradients in the case we need them. Think about how the own and the cast shadows would affect this character. I'm just using a regular default brush for this. See how we can start shaping the character from here. This is a really dramatic light. That means that under chin we would have a really powerful light. By the way, as you can see, I'm simply erasing the layer I created here. Excuse me. Let's go. Let's keep going. I'm gonna try to do these very quick because after a while this exercise turns into something a bit too repetitive, but I think it's at the end it's going to be interesting to see how also the position of the light, it affects the mood of the character, and it really changes what we're trying to say. That's why it's important to practice a bit with this, and also it gives us a way better understanding of the shapes of the characters. And as I said, for this you really need to practice. Practice here is essential. So the more you practice shading, the better your drawings will look. This is like going to the gym. You go every day, you're gonna get stronger. So it's the same with drawing. I was gonna say that I never met anyone who didn't learn with practice, but it would be a lie. I actually met some, you know, like very strange examples for that. People who seem to just got paralyzed or simply never get better for some reason. But I think that probably obeys to other kind of issues that are not relevant for what we're talking about. But I can almost guarantee you, 99.9%, you keep practicing, you're gonna get better and better and better with time. So keep practicing. Okay, I think we are gonna have to get rid of some more of the light here because it's getting a bit too frontal, and I really want this to be a light coming from above. So maybe I can lower the opacity a tiny bit here. Make sure that there's no light here, and keep using the eraser to get rid of this. Notice that I'm just using normal brushes, no texturing, nothing. I'm just concerned about shading here and shapes, and trying to understand really how the shapes would look. Notice that if I leave a border, I create this effect of of shaping here. Okay, what else here? I'm just gonna create a bit more of a shading here. I think I could have been a bit more extreme with this light. I might have to go back to this one, but I think that for our purpose here, it's gonna be enough. Actually, this could also be in shades. See, the good thing about this technique is that you can keep going and going. You don't have to, you know, the good thing about digital techniques and this kind of shading is that if you're not sure, you can keep trying, maybe painting again, recovering some of the lights, going back. It's practical, I would say. See that more and more this starts to look like a 3D sculpture. That's what we're looking for here. We're looking for a broad understanding of lights. Okay, and notice that I also only used one single layer for everything. I'm just using one level of shadows. That basically means that you don't need to get into super complicated things using 1,000 layers. Just try to keep it simple. And it will work if you understand the shapes. You don't need to do a lot of layers. You just need to do the right amount of work, trying to be accurate and trying to make sense with it. Okay, I think we can leave this one like that. I'm just thinking that maybe underneath it should be a bit darker. Yeah, something like this. So we can see clearly if everything's going well here. Just getting rid of some more lights here that were unnecessary, and I think we would be mostly done here. Okay, just for you to see, we can include some, I mean, it's not something that I'm really worried about that here, but we can include some more lights if you want to create some spotlights, but let's not get too complicated on this. Here, for example, we could have one, the reflection of the light coming from above. Maybe we could have some on the teeth as well. But as I said, this is not extremely necessary here. And also, I'm not gonna be super picky here. You see there's a lot of like little mistakes here that I'm just going to try not to get obsessed with, since I want to have time to go over the rest of shadings here. So let's go with the second. I'm going to create another layer here. Here we have a similar light coming from the other side this time. Let's pick a white color in overlay effect. Let's do the same, this time from this side, and this is going to be useful to understand especially long cast shadows. So we have a light coming from the side. Normally I establish one or two shadows that help me to understand how the light is going to look here. So again, it's still light coming from above. It means that all this part of the nose, it's going to remain in shades, and we're probably going to have a cast shadow coming from the nose to this side of the face. So we know we have that. Let's continue. Just gonna do a quick selection here. So a bit more of a shadow with the default gradient brush. See, that's why it's really important to do exercises with basic geometry, because then it really helps us to understand the more complex shapes. Let's keep going. I'm going to use a bit more the airbrush. Normally I use the airbrush first as well, you know, I try to go from the big surface to the more specific things. That's why I'm using more the gradient brush at the beginning. So this time the shadows are more leaned to the right. That means that shadow, the light will never reach this part of the face, so we can make sure of getting rid of all the light here. And also a bit here. And we can get rid of all the light coming from this side as well. As you can see, as I warned you, this gets a bit repetitive, but again, it's an exercise you should really keep in mind. Because it will really develop your understanding of 3D objects, and ultimately that's gonna help you to draw better, to paint better. So do it once in a while. Try to get a bit quicker so you all guys can keep going. I don't want to bore you to death, so you see the difference. I got rid of all the light on this side, and now I'm just focusing more on this side of the head. This time we would have a bit of shade here as well. And I think we're gonna leave this one here. Okay, let's go for the next one. This time we have a very frontal light. So we're gonna have to find a different way to cast light on the face. Now we cannot apply this typical light under the nose. So let's see what can we do here. New layer, alt click, overlay, and gradient with a brush. Okay, there we go. And let's pick the eraser again. Let's keep going. Where do we start here? Again, I think I'm gonna start with the base of the head. But this time we have a light that is slightly coming from above. So that means that we would have light under the nose, just like this. I know it can look a bit extreme, but when the rest of the light is the shadow, I mean it's there, it's gonna make a lot more sense visually. So now every shape that goes in needs to be in shades. Okay, here we would have as well the orange shadow on the chin. As you can see, this lighting is a bit more extreme this time. Something that really helps as well is to, if you're gonna have to draw these characters a lot of times, is to draw a little sculpty model of the head of the character. So this way, every time you have to apply light on it, on your comic or illustration, whatever you're working on, it's gonna be way easier to understand. I did it a few times. Also, it's a lot of fun. So it's something that I would 100% recommend. Buy some super sculpty. It's got cheaper lately, and do some sculpture of your character. There we go. It looks really different from the first two, but we're in a very different territory here. And it's gonna get even weirder lately. I think I can get rid of this one here. And I think more or less we're already done with this guy. Yeah, we're gonna leave this here. So you can see on these three effects, it really gives a very different feeling. This one, I would say it looks more like a horror film. This one is more like theater. So it really depends of what kind of mood you wanna show with the character. Now let's go to this one. This one is we could say the complete opposite from the first one. So this time we're going to go for the same technique, overlay, white, but this time we're going to have to put all the light coming from underneath the character. That means that we can pick the brush and maybe do some powerful secondary lights in some specific areas, like here. The hair on this character is very prominent. It's a big shape, so that means that it would really be affected from by a powerful light coming from underneath. And that will be enough. Let's start erasing. Similar to what we did on the previous one, we're going to get rid of the light on top of the nose, but this time we're gonna have to be more extreme. Let's start with this one, very general shadow, and let's go down from here. Go. And this one is a complicated one, but maybe we could study. It's gonna look like a mustache at first, but maybe we could get rid of this one as well. Yep, we're gonna leave this one. As you can see, it gives a very different feeling to the face. Actually, I'm just gonna bring the shadow a bit under, otherwise it makes the character looks a bit older. Okay, some more shadow here, and here I'm gonna use selection. Something that I use sometimes, it's the lasso tool. See, for stuff like this, to do a clean cut. See, I can hide the selection, pick the eraser, airbrush, and do something like this. See? Let's keep erasing here. The ears, the upper part of the ears wouldn't be affected by the light. He wouldn't have the powerful chin, the powerful shadow under the chin that they usually have. Just a bit of shadow here, and we're pretty much done with this guy as well. You can also practice with, if you have a Mac, with Photo Booth or any other program on PC that helps you to understand the light. You can use a little lamp and practice with your own face. The consequence of this usually is that all the characters end up looking a bit like you, but I think it's worth it. And also I think that anyway, that happens anyway, usually with comic artists. So okay, again we have another frontal here. Let's go very quick on this one. Gradient. Alt click and gradient here on the front part of the face. For some reason this one seems to be less intense. Oh, it's soft light, so overlay is what I want. Exactly. So I wanted to take this last example just to show how these shapes react when we have a light coming from the back. The temptation is just to keep it really simple and you know, just do something like this, something you've done, something you've seen 1,000 times, but let's try to put a bit more of time and care trying to understand how this character would be affected by the light. In this case, we don't start with a gradient like we used to do. I'm just gonna go step by step, just trying to find out which are the spots on this character that would be affected by this light. Again, I'm gonna do a selection for the face, so I can do something like this and create a more smooth transition here. And same on the other side. If this was in color, we could probably see the very characteristic red tone on the ears. We would see the blood flowing through them. So we can create that here a bit as well. Let's keep going. Maybe we would see some highlights here. And on the other side as well. Maybe it's a bit too much, but anyway. Also, some of these smooth transition, we would see it on the neck as well. Just like this and this. And also, I'm actually gonna put a bit more of light here, otherwise it looks a bit strange, almost like he had metal tooth or something like that. Yeah, not sure. Just some highlight here. Please note that I had to lower a bit the opacity since I don't really want to have a super high opacity here. Just want to create some secondary lights here and here. Let's go back to normal opacity and let's finish with this. Wait, this is not the right brush. This is the one. Let's keep going. We're profiling a bit the hair, so the light would create this very interesting effect all around the head of the character, but note that whenever we get in the middle of the face, we find less and less lights. In some cases, I'm gonna have to tune down the opacity again, just a bit lower. Let's go back to normal. And I think we could leave it here. And let's finish with the last two examples that I will speed up as well.